Erick Stakelbeck joins us now. Eric, first France, then Belgium, and now the United States of America is next for ISIS. Is that their plan to bring their Islamic Caliphate to the U.S.?
And Mark, it is. Look, they want to bring this Islamic Caliphate globally to every corner of the world. That is ISIS's endgame. It sounds crazy to the average person, but look, already ISIS controls 35,000 square miles of territory in the heart of the Middle East. Mark, that's an area the size of Great Britain. So they're gradually expanding this thing in the Middle East. But the reason I wrote my book, ISIS Exposed, Mark, is really to give the American people an education on what's happening right in our backyard. Look, I think a lot of times folks think of ISIS and they think, well, that's thousands of miles away. It's in the Middle East. It doesn't affect me here. Well, Mark, I'll give you an example of how it does affect us. Just last month, the FBI director, James Comey, made a very stunning statement. He said that in all 50 U.S. states, that includes Alaska and Hawaii, right now we have active investigations ongoing into ISIS-related activity on U.S. soil. So basically, Mark, what the FBI director is saying is that, look, we have a network of sympathizers and supporters of ISIS in every state in the union. So the barbarians are not just at the gates, Mark, they're inside the gates.
Eric, which state here in the United States is the #1 terrorist breeding ground?
Well, Mark, you might be shocked to hear it, and we've talked about this on CBN News as well, but there's a chapter in my book called The Islamic State of Minnesota. Now, it's tongue-in-cheek, but kind of not. As we've documented here on CBN News, Mark, look, Minnesota, in the frozen tundra of the upper Midwest, has sent more terrorists overseas to join groups like ISIS than any other state in the union. That's astounding, Mark. We've seen over the past 7, 8 years or so, dozens of residents of Minneapolis and St. Paul, a very nice place, a place with a high standard of living, a prosperous place. Dozens of residents of those two cities have traveled overseas to join ISIS and other terror groups. At the end of the day, Mark, I've been on the ground in the Somali Muslim communities there. They're the main targets. The large Somali Muslim population in Minneapolis and St. Paul are the main targets of this ISIS recruitment drive in Minnesota, of all places. I've been on the ground, Mark. I've spoken to Somali Muslim community leaders there and former law enforcement officials there as well. And they've said, look, Eric, here's the pitch that terrorist recruiters give to these young Somali kids. They come into the mosque or the rec center. They target 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, vulnerable kids, and they'll say, look, come to the Caliphate. Come join ISIS and you'll be a glorious holy warrior. You'll be at the vanguard of this new Islamic empire. Everyone will know your name. You'll be a rock star in the Middle East. That's the bill of goods these kids are sold. And for many of them, Mark, that's an appealing message.
So ISIS appeals to Western youth in a way that Osama bin Laden never did. Why is that?
You know, Mark, the main thing, and I have an entire chapter on this in ISIS Exposed because it's so important. The social media savvy of ISIS is unlike nothing we've ever seen. Whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Mark, they are all over social media. And the folks who are running ISIS's social media operation are Westerners. So, Mark, they know exactly how to connect with a Western English-speaking audience. Look, ISIS sends 90 tweets per minute. These are not the old days, Mark, where it was, Osama bin Laden in a cave standing in front of a green screen and droning on for an hour in Arabic. ISIS is cutting edge. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make these slickly produced propaganda videos that look like a Hollywood action flick, Mark. So they know exactly how to connect with young people, and it's working. We've seen 180 U.S. citizens leave their comfortable homes here in America, travel overseas to join the Caliphate, Mark, and we've seen at least 3,500 Western Europeans from places like France, Britain, Germany, again, go to Syria and Iraq and join ISIS. And if they return, Mark, if they return here, these are U.S. citizens, all bets are off.
What does the United States need to do, Eric, if we are truly to cripple ISIS?
Mark, number one, it almost sounds simplistic, but we need to smash ISIS militarily in that caliphate, in Syria and Iraq, that area that ISIS is controlling, where some 30,000, 40,000 of their foot soldiers have set up shop. We need to smash them, Mark, like we smashed the German war machine, the Japanese war machine, in World War II. It's that simple. In the book, I detail my conversations with military strategists who say, look, Eric, we can't defeat ISIS through airstrikes alone. We can't destroy them like needs to be done just by bombing them from the air. We need some kind of U.S. footprint on the ground, Mark. Now, that doesn't have to be a massive footprint, but think about 2001 in Afghanistan. We had U.S. Special Forces, we had the CIA working with the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan. They routed the Taliban. Mark, I think we can do the same thing in Iraq and Syria right now. We can work with the Kurds, who are fierce fighters, who are very pro-American. We can work with Assyrian Christians who've shown a willingness to fight. We can work with some of the moderate Iraqi tribes, but the U.S. has to lead this fight. Unfortunately, Mark, it would be great if Muslims could do it themselves and rout out ISIS themselves, but they're not able to do that clearly yet. So we need to be involved in this fight because, as I said, Mark, it threatens us here as well. It's not just over there, it's over here.
Tell us about the contents of the ISIS handbook.
This is chilling, Mark. You know, I get into this a bit in the book. The main thing that sticks out in my mind and is really just a revolting thing is basically ISIS legalizes slavery. In this handbook that's given to their followers, they say, look, when you raid a village, a town, a city in Iraq or Syria, the spoils of war are yours. And that means you're allowed to enslave women and children. Not only enslave them, Mark, but heinously, they're using sex slaves. ISIS right now is running brothels for ISIS fighters to basically, Mark, rape Christian women, Yazidi women, religious minorities. Look, ISIS in this handbook makes no bones about the fact that they are pursuing a genocide against Christians in the Middle East. In the birthplace of the faith, the cradle of Christianity, ISIS is openly slaughtering Christians. It's reminiscent, Mark, of Hitler and the Jews during World War II. Hitler was very open about his aims. ISIS does not hide what they're trying to do. Their aim is genocide.
Why do you say that our southern border here in the U.S. is a terror attack waiting to happen?
You know, Mark, it's amazing. Actually, it's disturbing that 13 and a half years after 9/11, that border is still Swiss cheese. I mean, it's wide open, it's porous. One of the most chilling parts of the book, I think, was my conversation, I include it, Mark, with a former CIA clandestine services officer. This is a guy who served in hotspots around the world for 30 years working for the CIA, and he told me, Eric, the thing that keeps me up at night is the possibility that an ISIS operative armed with a biological or chemical weapon of some sort will cross that porous southern border. And Mark, you know, it's so wide open down there that it's almost, there could be a flashing neon sign, welcome jihadists. I mean, it's just irresistible for ISIS and other terror groups. And you have to think, Mark, that some terrorists have absolutely crossed that border by now. You just have to believe it's so irresistible and so wide open. And, you know, I really believe our government is going to have to answer for that. If we have an attack, Mark, stems from that southern border, the American people will be furious, to say the least.
Okay, well, your book is called ISIS Exposed, and it's available wherever books are sold. Eric, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Mark.